So from this, you can probably see what being present means. It just means that you use your awareness to be with yourself, to kind of be slow with yourself, to think slowly and to not rush, but actually be aware of what's going on, and then just being engaged with this moment, and it happens naturally. If you want to, typically if you want to do something, then you're engaged. If you don't want to do something, then you're disengaged, and you're divided against yourself. And so being present is the best indicator of happiness, because if you're present most of the time, that means that you're doing something you want to be doing. And if you feel divided against yourself, then most likely it means that you're not doing what you want to be doing. And so a good example, for instance, like if, and then sometimes we might think that that's actually not the case, but if we really look at all the examples in our lives, we'll realize that it actually lines up pretty well like this. Let's say, for instance, we're doing something that we really want to be doing, but we're feeling divided. Then someone might say, well, but Master Kim, I was actually doing something I want to be doing, but I just couldn't focus because I was worried about my mom or my dad, or whatever it is. And I would say, so what I'm hearing you say is that you're doing an activity that ordinarily or most of the time you enjoy, or even maybe in that moment it is something that you were enjoying, but you couldn't fully be present with it because your mind was with your worries about your mom or with your dad, or whatever the person said. The person said, yeah, that's right. So are you saying that you'd rather be with let's say, for instance, it's a mom, like you'd rather be with your mom? And the person would be like, oh yeah, I guess so. I guess that's true. So oftentimes we kind of forget or confuse that what we ordinarily like, we also think we should be liking in this moment, when actually oftentimes that's not the case. And when we're present with this, and when we're divided, we will realize these things. We'll be like, oh, this is something I really enjoy most of the time, but right now I'd rather be with my mom, and so on and so forth. Sometimes it can be just like guilt, right? So I feel like I should be with my mom, but I want to do this. But because we were not present, that we were feeling the guilt, we're divided. And so by the time we become aware of this and say, oh, I can see I'm feeling guilt, but that's actually useless. Right now, it's not like I could actually be with her anyways. So I should actually just decide on a time when I can be with her and finish like doing what I'm doing right now, and then be present with her when I get the chance. And so that's why being present is so powerful. And if we understand that, then we realize that it barely has anything to do with what we're doing. It actually has to do with the understanding of that being present is actually the way for us to have what we want, or that when we are engaged, that's a sign that we're actually happy, right? And so it's just a matter of awareness. And so if we understand that being present is an indicator of happiness, and why, that when we are doing the things we want to be doing, that we're present, but then when we are doing things we don't want to be doing, that we become not present, then that awareness helps. All of a sudden, if we don't feel present and we don't feel engaged, then we know, oh, I'm feeling divided about something here. And then you can be present with that. And then you will feel good. You'll feel good about being present with that. And all of a sudden, now your happiness spreads just because of this awareness. And so I wanted to kind of just cover this in more detail, because I felt that when I covered happiness in my other video, I realized that it was too conceptual probably, and probably not enough detail to really get a feel of what it even means to be present. And so I wanted to just kind of correct that and see if I could just bring more natural examples, because if we understand how uh, naturally these understandings come out of nature, of what happens naturally, then we can actually just let things naturally happen. We don't even need to try and do anything. For instance, I said that when we're doing things that we want to be doing, then we're present. And when we're divided, that means that we're doing something we don't want to be doing. And when I gave that example of when we're divided, those are actually the people who are actually happy with negative emotions or negative experiences. And so again, we just studied people who are naturally doing things that were effective. And we were like, hey, you seem to be actually happy even when you're going through something difficult. What's going on? And I said, well, you know, I realized that just trying to not trying to deny the reality of what was happening wasn't helpful. So I just became present with it. And when I became present with it, I just liked myself better. It's kind of like that experience and people sharing that, and then people realizing that actually just being present is pleasant. And so uh, a good example of that is I went to Vietnam once to do an audit when I was working in the corporate world, and it was really fascinating because there are all these people just sitting by the bench by a river, and just sitting doing nothing. Like, it was so peaceful. At least when I visited, it was so peaceful, and people were just riding around on bikes, and there was just this pervading peace. Things were slower, and these people just kind of understood the art of silence, that if you're present, you're happy, and that if you're present, that you produce really good quality work. And I feel that you really get to see that in Miyazaki, the animator, a famous Japanese animator. If you ever watch any of his work, whether it's Princess Mononoke or Totoro or any of these animations, what you'll see is that there are these moments of just peace and quiet, and it's just beautiful. And you just feel happy, you just feel so content, yet you're not doing anything. And that's meditation. Meditation is just learning how to be content because you're present. And so people realize that when you're content and you're just sitting and doing nothing, that's really good. So some people started practicing that. And when you start practicing that, it deepens. And when you meditate, it deepens, and so on and so forth. So it's almost better to look at it from that perspective, because then you realize you're meditating a lot more often than you think. And I feel like nowadays, oftentimes, it's become so formalized. So if you're not formally sitting and your eyes are closed and you're like this, then you're not meditating. But then how do you bring meditation into rest of life? And so what I tell my students is meditation is when you have just a focused time of being able to be present with yourself, where you just are present with the things that you notice about yourself. And it's a calibration point because you have no distractions. But life is not like that. We don't live life in isolation. And so I feel it's much better to kind of understand meditation from this perspective of life, of how it happens naturally, and just to be able to recognize these moments when we are present and when we're not, and bringing awareness to that.